The news that Arron Banks, the Brexit campaigner, is being investigated by the National Crime Agency has been welcomed by those who say there's a lack of transparency in the way that money was supplied to various groups who wanted Britain to leave the EU before the referendum. Mr. Banks himself says he did nothing wrong. In fact, he says he welcomes the police investigation, which will finally put an end to the ludicrous allegations levelled against me and my colleagues. I've been talking to Carol Cadwallader, the journalist for The Guardian and Observer, who's been investigating Mr. Banks and his companies.
Well, it's not just me. There's a whole range of journalists who've been trying to excavate the Arron Banks's business dealings, and we have failed. So as journalists, we have failed. We have no insight really into how his businesses run because they're offshore, essentially. And so what we had yesterday was the Electoral Commission throwing up its hands and passing over the files to the National Crime Agency because we simply don't know the source of the Arron Banks's donations to the Leave campaign.
And when you say offshore, we're talking about the Isle of Man.
Well, we're talking about the Isle of Man, but we also know Arron Banks has a whole network of companies offshore. He has companies in Gibraltar, and he has companies, he was actually mentioned in the Panama Papers. He has companies in the Caribbean also. So the business people put companies offshore. One of the reasons they do that is for the lack of transparency that it offers. But is that acceptable in a political donor for donations to be so transparent? Well, the parliamentary committee that looked into this said absolutely not, and this was really, really concerning to them, and they put this in their report, which was published in the summer.
Banks says this is all ludicrous allegations levelled against me and my colleagues. He's welcomed the police investigation. He says there's no evidence of wrongdoing. He's a UK taxpayer. He says, has never received any foreign donations.
Well, the thing about that is that he can't prove that. And that's been the problem. And that's been what the Electoral Commission has been up against.
And is the point that he's going to have to prove that now to the police?
Well, let's hope so. I mean, the police have got the sort of, the proper investigatory powers to be able to compel evidence.
Have the police come to this late? Too late?
Far, far too late. I mean, it's extraordinary that it has taken this amount of time to get a police investigation opened. And it's still not holistic. So it's a car crash of illegality and alleged illegality.
Well, it's alleged, isn't it? That's the point. Because Arron Banks, just to make it plain again, he says he's done nothing wrong.
That's right. But if I can go to what happened with Vote Leave. So the evidence that the Electoral Commission has handed over now to the Metropolitan Police about Vote Leave and Believe, the Metropolitan Police has sat on that evidence, we now know, for at least 4 months. The Electoral Commission handed over the evidence to them in May, the beginning of May. And the Metropolitan Police, we've just found out, didn't start looking at it until the very end of September. I think this has been so hot to handle. No one agency has really wanted to I mean, everybody's been trying to pass the buck to other people, and there's a real sense of just kicking the ball down the line, that this is something to deal with after Brexit has happened. And we now know that there are significant question marks over whether this was a free and fair vote. And so that's why people like Damian Collins, who's leading the committee, and Tom Watson, the deputy leader, are now saying that we've got to have a proper public inquiry into this. We need to have a Mueller-style investigation. But also this really, really significant question of foreign interference.
But of course, all of that, I mean, all the other investigations, indeed this investigation, this police investigation, the likelihood is that we will have left the European Union on the basis of the referendum before these things are reported.
Well, I mean, we know, I can say categorically, we know that there are major problems with what happened in the referendum. And, I really do think that one day those will come out in the fullness of time. If we're prepared to leave the European Union on the back of that, of what is a corrupted vote, then so be it. But that is a political question.
Carol Cadwallader, thank you.